Hi, this is Pastor Jim Wallace with Bible Questions Answered once again, and I've been asked a very interesting question. Where did Jesus go between his death and his resurrection? The answer actually has a couple different parts, and the first has to do with what happened with his body. Most of us know what happened with his body. It was buried, and it was raised again on the third day. We have specific reference to that. Matthew 27:57 through 61, Mark 14:42 through 47, Luke 23:50 through 56, John 19:38 through 42, all record that after Jesus' death on the cross, Joseph of Arimathea, one of the um, members of the Sanhedrin, came and asked Pilate for the body, and it was granted to him. And he and Nicodemus both anointed it for burial and put it in a newly hewn tomb. And of course, we know that it was raised from the dead on the third day. But the bigger question is what happened to Jesus' spirit and soul before his resurrection after his death? And the answer to that is actually addressed by Jesus himself in two places, Matthew 12, verses 39 through 40, and Luke 23, 42 through 43. Matthew 12, we'll actually start reading in verse 38. The Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus asking him for a sign, and he said to them in verse 39, but he answered and said to them, an evil and adulterous generation craves for a sign. And yet no sign will be given to it, but the sign of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a sea monster, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So Jesus is indicating that his soul would be in the heart of the earth for those 3 days and 3 nights that constituted the time between his death and resurrection. Another place where we find reference to that is in the Gospel of Luke. Of course, you're familiar with the thief on the cross. The thief on the cross had been railing against Jesus along with the other criminal crucified at the other side of him, but apparently had a change of heart. He repented and decided that Jesus truly was the Son of God after all. And as he has this change of heart, he says to Jesus in Luke 23:42, Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom. And he, Jesus, said to him in verse 43, truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise. So Jesus was telling this man who was crucified with him that they would both be in paradise on that very day. Obviously, after they died, between Christ's death and resurrection, they would be in paradise. And somehow that's a place in the center of the earth. Now, there's some confusion about this whole thing that is created by the fact that paradise is spoken of again later in the New Testament by the Apostle Paul himself. And the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, verses 2 through 4, makes it clear that paradise is not down, but it's up, that it's in heaven. And he says that he knows a man who, whether in body or in spirit, he does not know, actually spent time in paradise. He might well be speaking of his own experience while still alive, that he had been in paradise. And he says about that experience, I know a man who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a man was caught up to the third heaven. And I know how such a man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, God knows, was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words which a man is not permitted to speak. So we hear from the Apostle Paul that paradise was in the third heaven, and that this man was caught up into the third heaven. So the question we ask now is, if paradise was down for Jesus, if it was even in the heart of the earth, how could paradise be up for this man who was caught up into paradise, according to the testimony of the Apostle Paul? We'll answer this question in our next session of Bible Questions Answered. This is Pastor Jim Wallace. Contact me with your questions at pastorjw@nvbell.net, and I'll be glad to answer them for you. Until next time, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you.